Okay, I can't do it anymore. All right. Hello, everybody. I'm Sonia Just, and this is Robert Hornbeck from Uncharted Interactive. Tonight, we're going to be discussing our experience with our second game for our games and hangout called Closure. Closure is a puzzle platformer game where you use light to navigate through the levels to get to the door at the end. And there's darkness in the game, and if you don't control your light properly, you could fall into darkness, and pretty much that's like dying, and then your level starts over again. So if you want to know more about Closure, if you haven't already played it, you can watch many videos online, but there's also closuregame.com, and it's also on Steam for purchase. And I believe it's on PS3 as well. And we played the Steam version of the game, which I'm pretty sure is the same. It's just on Steam. So I will start a discussion with the same question I had the first time, Robert, your phone, which is, what was your first impression of the game, maybe based off of like the videos that you saw? Like, what did you expect?
It was pretty much what I expected it to be, at least with the basic light mechanic. I didn't expect some of the things that they ended up doing with it, but for the most part, it was kind of what I was expecting. At least the basic gameplay of manipulating the light to kind of change the shape of the level and all that. What I was surprised by was the way that the character kind of changed physically. Didn't seem to have any kind of effect on the gameplay, but maybe it's got some kind of story importance, although I didn't really seem to care or notice any particular story. But it was a good first impression.
Yeah, I'm pleased with the game when I started to play it. I actually expected it to be more creepy, maybe with more monsters in it, just because it kind of had this eerie, dark feel to it. But
Yeah.
I feel like it's more about the background and the music and the darkness itself actually being the scary, eerie part than monsters popping out and you having to fight them and stuff. Which I like the subtlety better. I think it made it creepier. And I think it was a really good choice for this month. I wanted to pick something that was creepy and eerie for Halloween, and I feel like that at times I definitely was scared, especially when the darkness was luring behind you, and you were like afraid you were gonna die or whatever.
I didn't really feel scared or creeped out by the game. In fact, I thought it was going to be scarier, but it was really just a black and white game that had some, slightly unsettling music. But for the most part, I wasn't really scared because I was wrapped up in the actual gameplay experience. But there were some weird things about it.
Yeah. Well, talking about like the darkness and that aspect of it, how did you feel that worked as a gameplay mechanic? Did you have any problems with it? Did you really enjoy it? Was there anything that
I actually,
about it?
as the game progressed, I actually enjoyed it a little bit more because, initially you're just moving little orbs of light around and turning light fixtures to kind of build paths for yourself to get to the door. And I thought, okay, that's all right. That's about what I expected. But later when it started to get a little more complicated and you actually had to, it was less about just creating a path, but it was also about creating holes, using darkness to create holes, or, and then light that was moving that you had to kind of keep up with, definitely made it interesting. I think it was a really neat idea. There's a lot of companies trying to produce these new ideas, and for platform games, especially in puzzle games. And I don't think I've ever seen anything like this before. At least not the way it was done. I mean, there's other games where you manipulate light, uh, you know, for your own well-being, but you can still go into the dark, and typically you're okay. It's just harder or more dangerous. In this case, you literally, if you couldn't see it, I guess their whole like catch line is if you can't see it, it doesn't exist. So you might have been through that area when it was lit up and there was a pathway there, but if it's not lit up, now it's just empty space. And I thought that was really neat. Where I feel like it kind of, where it wasn't done as well is because it was a black and white art style, a lot of the textures were either black or white, and so what may have looked like a solid surface, uh, or what was a solid surface, looked more rough. So it looked like you might have been able to stand on certain things, but it was really just a black portion of the surface. It wasn't. It had nothing to do with light and dark. It was just. It was colored black, and so I felt like that was a little weird sometimes. I almost wish things were solid colors so that I could more clearly see how the shape of everything was. But maybe that's part of the challenge, is not being able to see it perfectly.
Yeah, yeah, I feel like the difficulty I had at the beginning was not knowing if something was just, like you said, it was a dark spot, or if it was something I could jump on, or how much I could stand on, and how much of the darkness I could go in. The game at the beginning, like I don't know if they had a tutorial. They kind of had a tutorial in the first few levels where they
Yeah,
tell
an
you how to do
interactive
the
tutorial.
controls, but they don't really let you know exactly how much you can go onto an object into the darkness before you just fall off.
Yeah.
And I
Well,
feel like the game's kind of like finding out the hard way. That's how you
mhm.
learn it, by dying and then going, oh, okay, well, I can't do that, but I can manipulate this darkness just a bit to jump over this little gap, and I can get to the other side. But a certain
Yeah.
point, this ledge isn't big enough, or this gap is too big.
Yeah, because the light didn't go all the way to the edge, or I should say because it faded, you couldn't, like you said, really tell where the end was. Sometimes you could actually be standing in the darkness and still be on something because it's just a little bit lit up and you just can't really see it. Which isn't a terrible thing, but it's definitely made it a little bit less consistent, especially in situations where there's a lot going on. Um, and I mean, yeah, the tutorial, which was basically the beginning of the game, every level was kind of a tutorial, so it didn't really have a real specific tutorial. Um, but yeah, it's definitely one of those games where you do die a lot, you fail a lot, and you kind of figure things out. But each level is fairly short, so it's not like you have to backtrack a lot. So there's a lot of trial and error, and actually I found myself in some cases literally just jumping off of things to see what happens because I might see something while I'm jumping through the air with a light source in my hands. So I didn't really fear death. I just feared having to start over.
Yeah, I mean, there were a few levels that I did it so many times. I know it wasn't long, but it felt like it was. And in some of the levels, like, you have like this tiny little scape of what you're going to see at first. Some of them they kind of show you more, and some of them they barely show you anything. So
Yeah.
you could be in this narrow place, or a huge, wall above you with all this stuff on the sides and everything, all these designs, and you just have no idea. And
Hmm.
so you kind of do have to, play with it. Like I had an issue with some of the levels with the barrels, where they would roll off, and they would roll off into the darkness, and so I'd have to jump off and go, well, okay, where are they going, and what's the purpose of these? And so I jumped down, and I ended up getting crushed by them.
Yeah.
because I was trying to figure out where they were going, and I was trying to see the rest of the level because I thought, well, maybe if I could see where the door is here, I can kind of plan out what I'm doing. But sometimes it doesn't allow you to do that. Sometimes it's like, well, if I do that, I'm definitely going to die. And I
Yeah.
just have to like on a few levels, you kind of had to take like a leap of faith into the darkness to see if you would fall on something that would have an orb or something you could use to get through the rest of the level.
Yeah.
I think those leaps of faith were the parts that actually I found to be the creepiest because you're just going nowhere. You don't know where you're going. You're just gonna fall
Yeah.
on something. You hope something's there.
Yeah.
So
True.
well, it could be nothing. You could just fall, which I had happen to me several times, or you miss it by like a long shot, and it's like, oh god. So yeah, but I like that the game. I don't know. I feel torn between the direction, having direction, no direction, and having to find your direction because I'm not like the best gamer. So I feel like it gets a little frustrating for me, but I'm getting kind of tired of games that totally guide you and tell you exactly where you're going.
Well, I think the fact that it's all about light and dark, it's a lot about exploration and trying to find stuff. You know, I mean, I think some of the levels would not be as interesting if you could see where the door was.
Hmm.
Although there are other levels where you could see the door and it didn't make a difference. It was still hard to get to because you had to figure out how to manage everything in between. But I know that on some of the later levels that I was playing, I didn't know where the door was, and that was actually one of those cases where I would just grab one of the little light orbs and run around and just see where I could go with that by myself, so I could either find the door or discover some things. And I think that's intentional. You know, I think that's pretty intentional that you were supposed to explore and find those things.
Yeah. What did you think about the puzzles, like the variations on the puzzles? Did you feel like they were really similar, or that you would have liked something more, intricate, or do you feel like because lights and things were in different places, even though they had a lot of the same like objects and things, do you feel like that it was interesting enough? It kept you, it entertained you enough?
Uh, I It's funny. I found myself multiple times while playing, nearing a point where I would think that, oh, okay, this is getting old. And just before I felt inclined to say that, they would introduce something new. So I thought it did a pretty good job of keeping things fresh. You'd mess around with the light orbs enough times, and then you'd find a new way to use them, or they'd introduce a new way to use them. Um, and so I felt like the mechanics stayed pretty fresh. And Yeah, I mean, I thought it was pretty interesting and stayed interesting, and it mixed things up at a fairly good time. One thing I did really like about the game is I felt like for the most part each level could be completed fairly quickly. You didn't have to invest a lot of time on a map unless you died repeatedly. But usually it was like one particular part, and then you realize it, the light bulb flips on, no pun intended, and then you figure out like, oh, okay, this is what I need to do. So it felt like things were progressing pretty quick because levels were short as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I felt like they used a lot of the same elements. I knew for necessary reasons because they repeat the light sources and all that stuff. Yeah, I felt like it changed enough for me. And before, like I said, because they had the lights in different places and because you can't really tell the whole level, you didn't know if there was going to be some kind of surprise there was a new thing. Like when I first encountered water, I was pleasantly surprised. Although it was kind of creepy because you kind of move through it slowly and you don't know if this is going to be like one of
And the
those
music
surprise you,
slows down.
or like surprise you're going to drown.
Yeah.
I was like, they didn't tell you if you could breathe under the water or not. So that was kind of creepy for me. I almost didn't want to go. And then, not having spoiled myself with too many videos, I wasn't sure if there would be something in there. So there was always some kind of surprise, and I felt like there was enough variation on it too.
Mm.
And I liked how if you go into the different through the different doors with the different set of like 24 levels, you had like a little different character too,
Yeah,
and a different background, and kind of a different story. A lot of people I've noticed online were talking about how they felt like there was a real story to the game. I don't feel like there was a big story to the game, but I mean, they
I,
definitely had differences in their backgrounds and their characters, and maybe if you could come up with your own idea behind it, they had some other motive, each of them.
yeah. Well, there was no dialogue. There was no text. It was really the only thing that ever changed was your character's appearance and the terrain.
Mm.
And depending on the character that you played at, depended on kind of the way the environments looked. Uh, I mean, I didn't really notice anything different when we went from the weird little spider demon thing to the little construction worker mine car guy. Like that, the difference there didn't seem big to me.
Mhm.
When you changed into like the girl, that I thought was a pretty big change because then you had like fire effects and you had these houses that had lights on and trees that you pointed out had faces in them and there was lightning and all this stuff that looked more like a world and not just a jumble of stuff.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm sure, like you said, yeah, I bet you if you thought about it enough, you could probably come up with some kind of story, but there wasn't any real clear narrative that I saw. And I was very distracted by just playing the game that I didn't really think much about what the background looked like, um, or what the character was doing. I was just trying to figure out the puzzle.
I think though, if I were to go back through some of those levels, though, when I mentioned that sometimes it seemed like there was a lot more to the level that you than you really could see and probably needed to use to get to the door. But I wonder how much of that could be like special areas.
Yeah, and yeah, and I noticed that too. There were some areas where I thought, oh boy, this level's going to be long, and then all of a sudden the door's there,
Mm.
and you exit. I mean, it looked like there were some collectible things. I don't know if there's like this little firefly looking thing that would kind of float around. I wasn't sure if maybe you could collect that.
I did. I felt like I should have jumped or something at before the door before I went in. I don't know if that would have done anything, but
Well,
I know that there's achievements. There's some sorts of achievements. On Steam you always have these achievements.
there's
Sometimes it's
the
like you died a million times, yay, but or killed by drowning or something. But I didn't actually look at the list of the achievements, but I'm wondering if some of those might be those special things.
yeah. Well, now that I think about it, in the level select hub where you walk around the choose your level, I actually found a little hidden cave that you can walk back into, and there's this open room, and it has a little number for like a door, but the door isn't there.
Huh.
And in that room, it's called like um, the moths layer or like the moths something. And I wonder if the little firefly thing is actually a moth, and if you collect enough moths, they go there, and maybe it creates a door or something.
I think that there might be special things on the quote moths levels because I saw some things online where people were referring to them as moth levels.
Hmm.
And I think that there's probably walkthroughs and stuff to get like special things, but those might be where you'd find those areas. I don't think, other than YouTube and things like that, if they actually hint at special like things. I don't think they do because I feel like they don't really direct you very much in the game. So I almost think like you're left to actually find those special places, which I kind
Hmm.
of like. It's kind of like when we play old school games and you find like the glitch or you find like the special area like in Sonic or something where you get all the coins and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Where I'm pretty sure they never like let you know in those booklets. that there was anything particularly special hiding somewhere. You just kind of had to find it.
Yeah.
So, yeah. What did you think about the actual character design and the backgrounds?
Hmm. I actually really like the character design of the weird spider thing in the very beginning, and in
Little
many
demon.
ways, I was a little disappointed that the character changed.
Yeah.
'Cause I just thought he looked cool, you know. It was just this weird little, almost like a, it was almost like if a hoodie came to life because it had almost had like a little hood with like bat ears and four little legs, and it just looked cool.
You
And
know what I liked about him too is he's mostly the tutorial guy, which I felt like, the introductory levels. And I feel like he should have come back. Although we didn't go through that last set, so I don't know if he comes back again or if it's somebody else. I don't know, but I don't think he does. I think he's just there at the beginning, and then he's there for the um, the level selects.
mhm.
But if you were to lose something, like sometimes when like you go and you pick up your orb and you walk over and there's a box and you lose that box to the darkness, he kind of goes, ah, like he makes this little like oh no face. And the other characters don't react when they
Oh,
fall.
interesting. I didn't even notice
They
that.
just, yeah, that's what he does. And I'm like, oh, that's cute. And I thought the other characters were going to have some sort of like special reaction
Hmm.
when something happened to them. But when they fell, they just went, just fell. So I felt like they were kind of missing on that because he was such a character. But maybe that's just like his thing, and
Hmm.
maybe that they used that reaction so that you don't want to do that. You don't want to lose your box in the darkness. You don't want to get too far away from the objects that you need to complete the level.
Yeah.
Because he's more of a tool, it seems like, than he is actually like part of the base
And a
game.
real person.
Yeah, I really like him though, and I think it's cute because I feel like his I don't think when he picks up the stuff, it's like almost like he has the orb in his face. Like,
Yeah,
yeah,
that's
I
the
like
messed
that.
up
It's like
because he
he's
has like a
waiting
little
for
hole
it.
in his face.
Yeah,
I thought that was kind of what it would be, is like he'd pick up the orbs and stick them in his
in
face
his
and
head.
walk
Yeah,
around. I really liked that kind
yeah.
of
So
possibility. They didn't do it, but I thought
they
it would have
should have
been.
done it. They should have done that because that I mean, I know that's his mouth, but he could hold it in his mouth and he could
Is it
walk
his
around,
mouth?
be like, whoa, trying to
Is,
get through things.
is it his mouth? I didn't get that
Yeah, because
impression.
when if you didn't notice him freak out, if you maybe you never lost anything, but when he drops something, he kind of like just his mouth gets wider and he kind of like shakes a little, and yeah, I think that's his mouth,
Huh.
something like that. I don't know, whatever.
I thought that
Like
was
it
just
kind of
kind of
makes
like his dark face.
yeah,
But
but
yeah, I don't know.
maybe that's not what it is. I don't know, but it
It
almost
could
looks
be.
like
I
it
don't
almost looks like
know.
a mouth though, because of
Yeah.
the way he gestures when he drops them, the things fall.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, I would have liked to see him in it more. I liked the girl. I wasn't particularly fond of the construction worker guy. I don't know. He's more like a miner, actually.
Yeah. Well, I think would have been more interesting is if, because like every time you enter a new area where you change your form, the little crab demon thing grabs like a head almost and like puts it on, and then he becomes that thing.
Yeah. Maybe he's
Now,
a shapeshifter.
I think I think it would have been cool if it was kind of like Mario and his different suits, where every time he changes his head, he gets like a new ability. And it could be
Yeah.
something simple, but it might, I don't know. For me, it would have given more value to the different forms if they actually did something other than look different. But who knows?
I feel like too, like, there should have been some sort of tiny bit of light coming from his helmet. Because isn't
Oh,
that what they use it for? The
yeah,
miners?
and
They
actually
never
that would have been
noticed that.
perfect. That would have been a perfect
Yeah.
gameplay like mechanic if wherever you were facing, it was lit up.
Yeah,
That
but you couldn't maybe it would be restricted so that it's not like, oh yeah, you could just turn your light on and walk wherever you want. But I'm not
but
sure how to do that. But I
it
think it should
wouldn't
have been
even
utilized.
it wouldn't even have to light up everything. What if it was just in front of him? So it didn't
Yeah.
protect his feet. He would still have to carry something to make sure he could walk.
Yeah, but he can see ahead of him. He can see like, okay, is there a door ahead of me, or is there like a drop off or a
Yeah.
box? Yeah.
Or maybe the crab guy, the crab thing is able to pick up orbs and move them, but the guy with the helmet can't pick up anything. All he can do is move his helmet. And so
Oh, okay.
you can point it in any direction. You have to use that angle.
And then maybe he could also use the little lamps too.
Yeah, the lamps. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's millions of things you could do, and
Yeah.
honestly, I don't think the game even necessarily needs all that. I think the way the
No.
game works now is really nice. It's really fun. There's just some minor things I would have liked
Mhm.
to have seen, but
I just feel like you don't really need to have him do that, but I feel like if he has that sort of character, I would expect him to be able to utilize, that
yeah,
aspect of it. I mean, it's funny too, because like I didn't really understand why he was kind of like a construction worker miner guy. It didn't feel the levels didn't feel like that kind of atmosphere to me.
yeah. I didn't really feel like caves necessarily.
Like I understood the girl's atmosphere. It was this girl who's running through the woods and it's scary. I get that. I mean, that could be any person really. But his I didn't I felt like it should have matched,
Yeah.
you know. I mean, I still liked the levels. I thought they were fun, but I don't know. I kind of look for stuff like that sometimes.
hmm
I mean, it's not so much looking for a story, but the theme, I guess. Of the two that we've been talking about, the I guess I'm gonna call him the minor, and the girl. Which one did you like better, as far as like overall with the puzzles, with the look of the levels?
well, between those two, I think the girl, just because I think the levels were more interesting, and some of the gameplay mechanics they introduced during the girls' levels, um, were a little more exciting to me. I don't know if they were necessarily better than the minors, but they
Mm,
were a little more exciting, a little more motion going on.
okay. How did the music and sound effects and all that? How did you what did you think of that, and how did that affect your playing? Do you feel like it helped with the eeriness, or did you not really care?
Um, yeah, the music and sound effects really didn't impact me all that much. Um, but they didn't get in the way either. I didn't feel like there was any annoying sounds or repeating music because it was almost entirely, well, it was pretty much just ambient, you know, just kind of filling the silence. And it was a little, I mean, it had a creepy motif, but it didn't really make the game any more tense because I wasn't really afraid of anything but making a mistake, you know.
Right. Falling off and losing your place.
hmm
Yeah.
If there was more stuff uh, like if there were, well, and I haven't completed the game, maybe there's something like this, but uh, if there were like monsters
Hmm.
eh, when they're in, maybe there's some monsters that when they're in the darkness they don't exist, but as soon as they're hit by light they exist, and so you
Yeah.
want to get the light off of them or they're going to come after you, or vice versa, monsters that exist in the darkness but not in the light, and you have to be careful where you put the light because they could get to you. Yeah, I didn't have any sense of fear like that, so the music didn't add any more tension,
Right. Yeah,
but it wasn't bad.
I feel kind of bad that I didn't play all the levels because if there are monsters, I didn't really see anything mentioning it though. I mean, my only suspicion that there might be monsters is because on the controls it says shoot.
Yeah.
But I kept hitting, well, the default is shift. I kept hitting shift and nothing really happened, so I'm guessing you have to pick up something probably.
Yeah, probably later you get something.
Yeah. So I'm thinking maybe there's something like that. It could be that maybe you're shooting out lights or you're doing something else. I don't know. I kind of hope there might be something like monsters in there. I would think like for the girls level, that would make more sense because she's in a more creepy space
Hmm.
than the guy is. I mean, I can't really think of what would be in his arena.
Yeah.
As far as okay, so from what we've seen of the game, part of the game that we've played, is there anything that you would add to it or want in the game? Any way that you might change it,
Anything I would change? Let's
or
see.
anything that you would really want to see?
I think what I would really like to see is just cleaner lines on the background and things, so that it's just a little clear as to where things start and stop. Um, I think that's really my biggest complaint. I mean, I liked it. I mean, it was a puzzle game, and so sometimes the best thing to do in a puzzle game is keep it simple, you know.
Yeah.
And most good puzzle games are pretty simple, and I think that it pretty much did that. Is it kept it very very simple, and there was rarely a point where I was like, oh, they should have done this, or oh, they really needed that. It was just good clean fun.
I think the only part, it wasn't actually in the game, but the only part that I got a little confused with was actually the level select, where when you go in and to each world, and with the little demon, and you go to, like, say you're coming back after you've played for a while and you're continuing your game, and you're trying to find the next door. I didn't realize, I don't know why I didn't realize this, but to jump up to the next, like, platform to get to the next set of levels that I was on before. I didn't even think about it. I think it's because they don't really completely direct you. I didn't catch on at first, so the first time I went back to play, I actually ended up playing through like 8 levels that I already played through, and I go, oh my god, do I have to do this every single time? I don't want to do it. It's kind of like, the old games where it doesn't actually save, but I know it saves. And then
Yeah,
I found out later that it was there, but that was just because I kind of trial and error figured it out.
yeah,
And I'm not sure if I'd want it necessarily to be completely direct or not, but I feel like I can handle that in the game, but just trying to get to my level that I left off at, I really don't want any guesswork.
yeah. It was
So,
unnecessary to add puzzle mechanics to the level select
yeah.
hub, and it could have been as simple as every time you beat an area and move to the next one, a light shines on it, and it reveals it.
It tells you, like, this is where you are.
Yeah,
I think it's fine if there's like dark and light areas. And you have to pick up the orb every time too. So I never tried it. I probably should have. But if you don't pick up the orb and you just go into the dark, do you just fall?
yeah.
And then follow the level select and go back to the level select.
Yeah,
I
I
probably did
did that
crazy.
because I was like, I would start the game up and I'd be like, oh, I got to go over here and just immediately fall and die.
Oh,
Oops.
so you did then? You
I
did
did,
that.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I was wondering if that would happen. I thought maybe they'd give you a break and be like, okay, but they won't, because it seems like the whole thing behind the game is to keep that going, even
Yeah,
through that part of it. I mean, even when you're going just to get through the door for whatever world you're going into, even that you have to pick up the orb and go to it.
hmm.
So I wonder. No, I don't think you can get very far. I was thinking maybe you could just jump over, but I think you're kind of forced to pick it up.
In some areas you probably could have, but if you wanted to get up to some of the other levels,
Hmm.
other platforms, you'd have to jump with the light to
Yeah.
reveal the platform.
I think that was really the only big thing that bothered me about the whole game was just the level select. I did,
Otherwise, it was a solid game.
yeah, I really enjoyed it. I get frustrated at first when I don't know what I'm doing. You know that about me.
Oh
So
yeah.
once I get it, though, it's fun. So I enjoyed it. Is there anything else that you would like to add uh, for any part of the game that just, you know?
Not really. I like I said, it was a puzzle game that kept it simple, and things were logical and worked as I expected them to work. And It was just overall a good experience. I guess I would have liked it to be a little scarier
Hmm.
because I think mostly because the theme led me to believe it was going to be scarier.
Yeah.
But once I started thinking about the puzzles, that's all I thought about was just puzzles. It became math at that point, not
Right.
as scary, a fearful thing. But it was still a good game, and I enjoyed it.
Yeah. So, I guess I will end this here. We would have had a longer hangout if we had more. It was just Robert and myself this evening, so we would have had a lot more opinions. But we will be back here next month. Not sure. We're probably actually going to play a board game. I'm not sure what that board game will be yet, but I think I'm going to keep it to the last Sunday of every month. I know the holidays are coming up, so that could change, especially in December, but we'll see. I will post that on the Uncharted Interactive page, so look for it there. If you missed this live broadcast, you can always watch it. Well, you're watching it right now, but this can be watched again on the G Plus page. And please share this with your friends and go to unchartedinteractive.com to play our games. And we will see you next month for the next Hangout.
Yeah.
Bye, everybody. Bye.